go, Jim. He's dead.
Hello and welcome to Improv Autopsy. I'm your host, Stephen Cadwell. You're listening to part one of my interview with the extremely talented and multifaceted Joe Whyte, who is an accomplished 3D modeler, voice and film actor, and improviser. You can see Joe at many a GamerCon as he's the beloved voice of Chris Redfield in the original Resident Evil remaster, and he has a survival horror podcast, Crimson Head Elder, which we talk about in the beginning of the podcast and I'll link to in the show notes. Joe also holds the distinction of being in the only musical improv comedy group to record an album, Steamy Monday, as part of the Impromptones along with his good friend Jeff Davis. At one time, that looked to be the course his life would take, but with improv, like any river you wade into, you never know where the current will lead you, and he's become an accomplished member of the gaming, voiceover, acting, and 3D modeling communities since. Talented improvisers can never really let it go, though, and his passion for improv is evident in our discussions. This interview is insightful and inspiring in so many ways. Please enjoy part one of Joe Whyte's Improv Autopsy. And please forgive any minor sound quality issues. I'm still learning. First of all, thank you so much, Joe Whyte, for joining me on the Improv Autopsy podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I'm sure the tens of people that listen will love to hear you.
All my fans, yes.
Maybe by the time this one's out, I'll have more.
Yep.
We'll definitely plug your Crimson Head. Is that correct?
Yes, the Crimson Head Elder podcast is a podcast I've been working with since 2015. We just had our 10-year anniversary, I think, last month.
That's amazing.
Yeah, all things Resident Evil. We do everything survival horror. We do Last of Us and Silent Hill, anything like that.
Okay.
We call it the Crimson Head Elder because it was originally a Resident Evil focused thing and based on my being in the game and all that. For anyone who is unaware, I was the voice of Chris Redfield in the remake of the original Resident Evil. My big claim to fame, Chris Redfield.
Hey, that's a great claim to fame.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it, actually. And as I've become more deeply involved with the whole survival horror community in the past few years, especially since I started doing the autograph conventions and touring around and meeting people, it's just been fantastic. I had no idea that there were so many people who were into the genre and really into Resident Evil, and the love that we have been shown as people involved with the franchise has just been overwhelming, to be honest. The remake came out in 2002, and it's a unique game in that it really kind of changed the paradigm of how games were made at the time with the pre-rendered backgrounds and whatnot, and it still holds up today. You can still play that game from almost 25 years ago, and it still looks great and plays great. It was an important game in the genre, so I'm very proud to have had a part in that.
Are there remastering plans? I know you said it still looks great, but is that something that they would do?
I would love to see that. I'm also a 3D modeler. I've worked in the animation and visual effects industries for 30 years. I'm actually in the process of retiring, so it means a lot to me to see these games remade and remade with current technology. Some people say that it doesn't need to be remade, and I agree. It doesn't need to be remade, but just as a geek and as someone who really appreciates what Unreal Engine 5 can do, I would love to see the game either in Unreal Engine or RE Engine, which is what Capcom's using to make all of the newest Resident Evil games, and of course it's commensurate in quality with Unreal, but I would love to see it get that treatment. And I don't even care if they reuse my voice, or if they wanted to use a whole new cast of young voice actors more appropriate for the gig, I would give my blessing to that in a heartbeat.
They don't feel like they have to model the character to look exactly the same age as the voice actor, though, do they? You should be able to voice someone that's younger than you.
That's the wonderful thing about voiceover, is you can voice things that you would never perform in real life. I think Chris Redfield in the game is something like 27 years old, and I'm just turning 64 this year. So, I mean, I think I could still do it. I can still sound like a 27-year-old guy, but I would have no problem. You know, the guy that does it now, that does Chris, Jeff Shine, does a great job. I really love what he does with him, so I would not feel bad if they gave him the part.
Yeah. One of the first people that I did improv with, a really big guy. I mean, just standing out in front of a building, you'd think he was a bouncer. And one of the things he told me was that he'd like to play small people because it was a role he was never going to get in real life. So, but in improv, he can do whatever. So
Sure, yeah.
he enjoyed doing that.
That's the beauty. Love it. One of my favorite type of characters is like the old wizard, the Gandalf,
Yeah.
the Dumbledore characters. I can't wait till I'm old enough to play one of them. I'm getting there. I'm close. And I love to do the old wizard voices and speak like that.
It just exudes wisdom.
It does. Something I've never had personally, but I can sound like it.
Well, let's move into improv a little bit then, if we may. So, just trying to compile kind of an oral history of improv in some kind of way. One of the things that I noticed on your IMDb is that you mention improv in that. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
presume that you had a hand in writing that. That wasn't written by someone else.
Yes,
So that spoke to your love of the art form.
absolutely. Yeah, it's my first love. I've never actually told the story of my improv involvement, but I got into improv in high school. I had a wonderful theater drama teacher in high school named Barbara Yannick, who was like my second mom. Well, like she was like everybody's second mom. She was just a very kind, caring person and a wonderful teacher. And she started us in improv back at Cleveland High School in Reseda, California, back in the late 70s. And I kind of fell in love with it there. And then I went to Cal State Northridge and I got into an improv group there called the Left Fielders, which I think is just the best name for an improv group. And we did shows around LA and at school at the time. And after college, I got involved with a theater company in Hollywood. And at the same time that I was doing that, I started studying with Gary Austin, getting involved in more improv stuff in town. I got into comedy sports, Los Angeles, and started doing that and performed with them all over Southern California. And we had a great run at the Ice House in Pasadena for a couple of years. We were the Sunday night show there, which was fantastic. During my time at Comedy Sports, we did a few musical games, and I have always been very good. I'm a very musical person. I write music, I play guitar and piano, and I sing. And there were a few people in the group who had a sort of a affinity for musical improv. So James at one point came to several of us and suggested that we try to do a separate show that was all musical improv. And we called that the Impromptones and got that together and started doing shows around Hollywood. We were regulars at the Cinegrill. We started touring around the country. In 2000, we were one of the headlining groups at the Chicago Improv Festival, which was absolutely amazing, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
We were doing cruise ships and we got picked up by William Morris Agency and they were talking about getting us into Vegas. And unfortunately, at that time, here comes the typical rock and roll destruction story. We were doing really well. Once the money started coming in, we ran into some contractual problems with, let's just say there were some discussions, there were some disagreements, and the thing fell apart.
Okay.
In a very ugly way. And we three of us tried to restart the group under a different name called the Newtonics after that. And we did that for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. But the mojo was gone at that point and it kind of fell apart. One of the guys in the group that is one of my dearest friends and the person that I most love being on stage with is a guy named Jeff Davis, who you may know from Whose Line.
Mm-hmm.
He's the tall guy who wears nice suits all the time. Being on stage with Jeff is paradise. It's the best possible experience that I've ever had in improv. So after the Newtonics kind of faded out, I drifted away from improv for many years. And gosh, I guess after about 10 years, I realized I wanted to get back into it because I missed being on stage so much. The thing about improv, and as an improviser, you probably know this, it's all about the people you do it with and the trust that you have with those people. And it's difficult to just put a group together and expect it to work.
Yeah.
Even if they're good improvisers, if there's no flow between the performers, it's not going to be a good time. So I've yet to actually get back into another group, to put the effort into getting another group together. I don't know that I ever will, but that's my sort of improv past. So 40 years of doing improv, kind of saw some really good success with it back in the Impromptones days and the Newtonics as well. With the Newtonics, we were doing shows around. We started doing some corporate stuff. We were at the Bad Dog Comedy Festival out in Austin a couple of times and did very well there. Yeah, so I'm out of the game right now. I miss it a lot. Improv has changed a lot since I was in it, and it's come a long way. And certainly the Impromptones and the Newtonics were on the cutting edge of musical improv at the time. There weren't a lot of groups that were doing it. Now there are. But we feel like we trailblazed a lot of territory back then in terms of what you can do with the musical improv show. And I really miss that the most. We had a keyboard player, pianist named Michael Pollock, who is just a frigging musical genius. Doing musical improv with him is easy because you can just start singing and he'll find you. He's got perfect pitch. If you just start singing in a key, he immediately starts playing in that key. Everything he plays is just sounds like Shostakovich. I mean, it's he's just brilliant. And I miss playing with him so much. We're still sort of in touch, but I haven't talked to him in years and I miss him a lot. I miss all of my improv buddies.
Well, so you mentioned high school, so I want to go back to high school a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure.
It was your drama teacher in high school that connected you first to improv.
Yes. Barbara Yannick piece. She was one of my two favorite high school teachers, and she sadly passed away a year and a half ago.
And how long was she teaching? She was retired by that point, I presume?
Yeah, she was retired. She'd been retired for a few years, but we stayed in touch over all the years, and because she was such a strong influence on me, she was really a second mom. Here's the thing about Barbara. She taught me what it meant to be cool, because she was cool, because she was a brilliant acting teacher. She cared about all of her students like they were her own kids. And we became real friends. I mean, even back when I was in high school, she was a mentor and a guide to just how to be a good human being. So I will always love her for that. Remember our relationship. And I became close with her family as well, with her husband and her daughters. And so, yeah, the Yannick family is very deeply embedded in my heart. I'll always have fond memories of them.
And when in your high school journey was that class? Was that when you were underclassmen or was it later?
I was always in acting in high school, 10th and 11th and 12th grade. The first year I had Mrs. Francis, who was also one of the great acting teachers. And then we got Barbara, took over for her in my 11th grade year, and then I had her for 11th and 12th grade. A lot of shows done with her. They were high school level shows, but they were still, I mean, our high school was actually pretty connected in terms of the acting world, and we had a lot of professional people come out of our high school. And back in the 70s, the San Fernando Valley had a lot of working actors and acting workers. A lot of working actors and celebrities lived in the San Fernando Valley. So it wasn't uncommon, no matter what high school you went to in the San Fernando Valley, to be in school with the son or daughter of someone famous. Why is that important? I don't know. I just had a great childhood, had some really great teachers in high school, and yeah, they're largely responsible for teaching me about the performing world. The way that I learned about acting from Barbara and from other teachers that I had back then really gave me a healthy outlook on what it meant to get into the performing arts, because Barbara especially kind of taught both sides of that. She would teach you a little bit of the business side, a little bit of the acting side. So you got a well-rounded education from her and her style.
Do you have any favorite roles from high school?
I had a couple of strange things happen in high school. We did Fiddler on the Roof, and I was supposed to play the part of Perchik. And I got chickenpox a couple of weeks before the show was supposed to open, so I wasn't able to do the show.
Oh, no.
I got really, really super sick. Sweet Charity I did in high school, and again, I was cast as one of the male leads and got sick a couple of weeks before the show opened, had to drop out. But we did a bunch of other shows. We did Six Rooms Riverview, which was a rom-com type thing. We did The Crucible, Arthur Miller, The Crucible, and I played Reverend Hale in that. That was a really good show. A myriad of smaller plays, and we would do some lunchtime play production things. We would put on little shows and whatnot. That was where my love of improv started, because Barbara got us into improv. She started us out with the whole Viola Spolin style improv techniques. And I really fell in love with improv then.
Did you have performance opportunities to perform improv in high school as well?
Yeah, we did like afternoon improv things. You know, we were like, people would come in during lunchtime and sit in the theater room, and we would do improv stuff on the stage and improv games and things like that. All pretty rudimentary. Improv in high school was more of just a side thing to all the other acting training that I was doing at the time and other teachers that I had.
So I'm assuming then that Barbara was doing this. This was acting, and it was improv was an acting skill, and it was teaching acting, not comedy.
Exactly right. Yeah. That Spolin was sort of basic. I mean, that was how improv was taught back in the 60s and 70s. And I think that was my high school years, was learning the rules of improv, and maybe even into college, learning the rules. You learn the rules so that you can break them correctly.
Yes.
There's a way to break the rules in improv where it works on stage, but you have to know what the rules are before you can break them correctly.
Yeah. And one of the things I like to tell people coming through with some of that stuff as well is, listen, if you don't follow this rule or if you don't do this thing, I want it to be a choice and not a habit.
Yeah,
So we're going to break you of the habit now so that you can choose to do it later, but it's not just a default.
yeah, that's exactly it. Make it a tool in your tool belt, not a weight weighing you down.
Yeah.
And then after high school, I went in the Navy for a couple of years and then came out and went to Cal State Northridge for college and studied acting there with some amazing, amazing people. It just really reinforced my love of the performing arts, and did some great shows at CSUN. I did A Cry of Players, and that was a great show. And again, just everything reconfirmed my love of performing and my desire to do it.
And then your college group, then the Left Fielders.
Yeah. The improv thing came up, and I was really happy to get involved with a group that was run by a guy named Wade Sheeler, who is now a TV producer, and a bunch of other folks from my class. And we did a bunch of shows. It was the first time that I'd ever been paid to act, was doing shows that we put on outside of school that people actually paid to come see. The Left Fielders was really my first foray into, I guess you'd call it, semi-professional improv. We were still very much students, but we were starting to do shows. And during that time, we had some really great instructional groups that we would go see. There was a group called Funny You Should Ask that we would go see at the Melrose Theater down in Hollywood. And they were just the best. It was some of the greatest improvers in town. People who had been in some of the older improv groups. They were in the Committee, they were in Off the Wall, people who had done improv with Robin Williams. And these are the groups that we would go see and watch and learn from. And we had people come from those groups to teach us improv. And that was just a really wonderful time. Michael McManus, in a Funny You Should Ask scene one time, did one of the funniest things I've ever seen. He walks into the scene, he takes off a jacket and pretends to put it over the back of a chair. And then he reaches up and takes off an imaginary hat. And he goes over to where a wall would be. And he goes to put the hat on a hook that's not there. And he drops it. And the hat, of course, drops to the floor. And he starts to walk away. Then he turns around and looks at the hat and tries to put it back on the hook a couple of times. Of course, there's no hook there. So the hat keeps falling to the floor. So he played with the reality of that moment by, I've got this imaginary hat, I'm putting it on a hook, but it's falling to the floor.
Yeah.
Acknowledging the fact that this imaginary thing is falling. So he played with that reality. And it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
I believe it. What were the Left Fielders doing, and where did it come from? Is it short form?
It was kind of short form. The show itself was a sketch improv show. So it was, probably 60% sketch work and 40% improv. The show itself was, we would come out, we would do some improv games to get the audience warmed up, and then we would do some sketches, and very much inspired by the Chicago improv groups, what they were doing. Second City style, doing improv and sketch work in a single show was kind of our format. And there were other groups around town doing it at the time. There was Mice was one. LA Connection was another group that was doing that kind of show. There were groups that we would go see and groups that we would steal stuff from. I mean, any improv show you see today, all those games have been played by every group ever for forever.
Yeah.
Very rare that you see a new kind of game in an improv show.
Yeah. You were tangentially part of what was going on with the Groundlings.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least Gary Austin.
Yeah, I mean, the Groundlings were the 500-pound gorilla in town, founded by Gary Austin, who I eventually ended up studying with. In the later 80s, I took improv with Gary, and he was just one of the most brilliant improv teachers in the world. Of course, Gosh, it's so sad that he passed away a couple of years ago. And my wife studied with him as well. My wife, Kate, is also an improv person. I never took the Groundlings classes because I was doing the other things. I didn't feel a need. I also never really focused on sketch as much, and
Yeah.
Groundlings is more like Second City in that they're half improv, half sketch. Now, if you want to make it as an actor in town, one of the best things you can do is take the Groundlings courses because they are so well known and they're so established in LA and so established as a group. I mean, it's like Second City, it's a launch pad for other careers. If you can become a star there, you're probably going to get picked up to do other things, TV shows and movies. And it's a great way to launch your career. Plus, I think everyone should study improv anyway.
I agree.
I think improv should be taught to people who have no interest in acting whatsoever because it's so usable in everyday life. Every day is you wake up and you're basically improvising your day. You don't know what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
if you know what the rules are, you can improvise your life in a little better format.
Your experience with Gary then class-wise, what was the focus there if there was one? Anything stick out in your mind about that time?
Gary's classes were about the truth and not performing, being actually in the moment. Because he was kind of an old school improviser, he never wanted you to go for the comedy. The comedy came from circumstances. The comedy comes from the way you handle relationships on stage. The comedy comes from, it's not the setup that's funny. It's, you're two male strippers on the space shuttle. Oh, how can we get funnier than that suggestion? It's really the reality of that and the depth that you can find in a relationship between two male strippers on the space shuttle. That's where the truth of the scene comes from. And that's where real comedy is going to happen, is if you can establish that and then deal with the issues of being a stripper on the space shuttle. He taught how to do that, how to find the reality of what you're doing, and also to find the reality in the actions that you were performing. Gary used to say, move to action. If you're on stage and you're stuck and you're two talking heads and you're just talking back and forth to each other and that's the whole scene, he said, stop that. Stop it. Move. Someone do something. Move to action. Find the kinetics of the scene, because we don't do that as human beings. We don't stand and talk to each other face to face about. There's always an action going on. There's something that has to be accomplished. Find a common goal that the two of you can be working towards. If it's chopping down a tree while the scene is going on, the scene has nothing to do with chopping down the tree. It's just that action has to be done while you're accomplishing the intellectual aspect of the scene, which is the conversation. That was one of the things I learned from Gary. But mostly it was just honesty. And I think that was the great gift that I got from Gary, was learning how to be real. He brooked no bullshit in his class. If you were bullshitting your way through scenes and just going for jokes and being laughy, he would call you out and bust your ass over that. And he would just say, you know what? You're acting. Stop it. Just be real. Find the reality. Be yourself. Be Joe on stage. Don't try to be this other thing. If you're doing a character, commit to the character, but you've got to do it honestly.
Yeah.
This isn't about yucks. This isn't about, hey, look at me. I'm being funny. I hate shows like that.
Was this around the same time then that Comedy Sports LA was getting started?
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
I was at a theater company called the West Coast Ensemble back in the 80s while I was studying with Gary Austin. And so several of the people that were at West Coast Ensemble, James Bailey was there, and he knew Dick Chudnow, and he got the rights to do the LA chapter of Comedy Sports. So he got people from the West Coast Ensemble to join that group, and I was one of the people who started. I wasn't in the original group, but I started like 3 or 6 months after they started the original group, and I joined Comedy Sports Los Angeles. And that show was largely based on the format that Dick Chudnow had created. And so there was a list of games you could play.
Yeah.
Comedy Sports is shotgun comedy because you're doing games that are being judged by the audience, right? And the whole gag of Comedy Sports is at the end of the thing, the referee comes out and says, okay, did you like the blue team or the red team? And people hold up their little paddles and they either vote for the red team. So you've got 3 to 5 minutes for every scene, for everything to be funny and to win that moment. Real improv is not a competition. But comedy sports is a competition. And that's okay. That's the format of the show. There's nothing wrong with doing shotgun humor if that's the point of what you're trying to do. And God knows I loved doing that show. I was in it for 12 years, 15. I was in that show for a long time. So obviously I had no problem doing that kind of comedy, but ultimately it became shallow and it felt the problem with shotgun humor and doing that show is that people tend to fall into patterns too much and reuse stuff that they know works. So, it is what it is, and it's funny, and the audience loves the heck out of that show.
Were you doing much musical improv outside of Irish drinking in comedy sports?
Yeah, there were a couple of other musical games that we played in comedy sports, and it was the 4 or 5 of us that really liked doing the music improv that formed the Impromptones out of the group.
Yeah.
The first Impromptones group was myself, a guy named Eric Wood, James Bailey, Jeff Davis, Michael Pollock. The games that we were playing in comedy sports were more like the Irish drinking song type
Right.
formulaic things. And we broke off and formed the Impromptones because we wanted to do something more original.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that kind of distinguished the Impromptones. We were the first group that we know of. I mean, really, I don't know of any other group in the history of the United States that had been doing all musical improv before us. There probably was, there may have been, but we started a show that was all musical improv games. And it started with the 3 or 4 of us that were in the Comedy Sports LA group. We had a dispensation for doing musical improv. I studied with Phyllis Katz, one of the great musical improv teachers of all time. She was with Off the Wall. She still performs with them down here in Culver City. So we thought it would be a unique thing. There was nobody else doing it at the time, and so we kind of made that our thing.
So the Impromptones, though, I'm gathering, wasn't your introduction to musical improv. When did that happen?
Oh, that happened in college. When I was doing the Left Fielders, we would do some musical bits. There's a real simple blues pattern that a lot of improv groups use for a simple blues improv game. And we did that in the Left Fielders. And then we also did a couple of songs in our sketches. So there were several people in the Left Fielders that were very musical as well. And that's kind of where I started doing that. I was fascinated by musical improv at the time. And then I found this class that Phyllis Katz was teaching. She still teaches. And this is probably 84, 85 maybe. And I just fell in love with musical improv. I mean, we used to go see Funny You Should Ask, and Phyllis would perform with them. And these people would do musical improvs that would just toast your brain, especially Phyllis. Phyllis is a master of musical improv. And I just found it fascinating. To combine those two skills just seemed like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
When you're working with a musician, a backup musician, like the one we had for the Impromptones, Michael Pollock, who is just absolutely amazing when it comes to improvising behind you. He would lay down these piano pieces that were so clear and so easy to understand where the music was going, that it became easy to sing. It became easy to discover the lyrics within what he was laying down. He's so good as a musical improv pianist that I could just start singing and he would drop into the key that I was in. His ears were so good that he would just start playing in the same key. And then if he would go through a subtle key change, and a couple of us had the ears to hear where those key changes were going. So our musical improv and the Impromptones ended up sounding too complex to be improvised. People would constantly come up to us after shows and say, but wait a minute, you can't have improvised that. You guys were doing 3-part harmony. And we're like, yeah, that's what we do. We know where the harmonies are going to fall. If you're playing a run, if you're playing certain musical changes, we know where the harmonies are. We practice that. But all the songs that we did were completely made up. I mean, they were all different. We didn't have any set patterns. We just knew how to find patterns once we were in a song. And we had gotten to a point where we were good enough to where thinking about the music part of it didn't interfere with thinking about the lyrics and trying to come up with clever lyrics. Did it always work? No, of course not. No improv always works, but it worked most of the time. And we also discovered, and this is very important to everyone doing improv, how to fail gracefully.
Yeah.
If you can fail gracefully, you'll never die on stage. You'll never have a bad moment. If you know how to laugh off a fluffed line or a weird concept, you will never be stuck in a moment that doesn't work, because there's a way to fail gracefully.
Yeah.
Johnny Carson used to do it all the time. He would tell a horrible joke, but the look on his face said, I know I just told a horrible joke. Laugh along with me. And you would, because it would be hysterical.
Yeah.
And that's what the best improvisers have a real knack for. You never see them sweat. You never see them get nervous on stage, because they're not. They know that they're going to hit walls. They know they're going to be derailed. But if you can make those moments mean something, you'll never fail as an improviser.
Yeah. So the harmonies that the impromptones had, like there's that level that you all had with that.
Yeah.
When you were starting all of that, how much of that did you all discuss or play around with? Or were you just going out there and doing it, and because of your sort of accumulated knowledge, because you were in a band forever?
Yeah. Yeah.
So some of this is just sort of in your body.
Yeah, exactly. I think several of us started out as musicians, and I think that that's a big difference. I think when you talk about improv groups, you may have people who are improvising lyrics and melodies who their focus is not music. They don't play music outside of doing that. But then again, there probably are a lot of people who do. And I think that having the musicality, playing an instrument, having fundamental musical knowledge before going in is fundamental to being able to create something musically complex. If you don't understand harmonies, you're not going to suddenly know how to do them when you join an improv group. I have 3 older sisters, and they would all play and sing music together. So when I was a little kid, I learned how to sing harmonies by listening to my sisters and trying to find the note that wasn't there. So they would have a tritone chord playing, and I would find the 7, or I would find the 6, or the 9, or whatever, to fill out the chordal structures. And that's how I learned how to sing harmony. So that's been a part of me. If I'm listening to someone sing, I can find the harmony to whatever someone's singing really easily. And a couple of the guys in the group, Jeff Davis in particular, is an extremely musical guy. I mean, he's as steeped in music as I was back then. And so we found it very easily to riff off of each other harmonically and musically. There's a song that we have out, it's on YouTube. It's from the Newtonics, and it's called The Newtonics from LA. That was a song that we made up entirely from scratch, and listened to not only the harmonics, but the melody structure is actually pretty darn good for something that's just coming off the top of our heads. That'll give you a little taste of what we did.
Within the group, was it always, well, Joe will take care of harmony, someone else will have melody, or was that just catch as catch can and you'd figured it out on the run?
Catch as catch can. There was a little bit of structure in the show run that certain of us would start a song. Like we would know that if we were doing, what's something that makes you angry? What's something that pisses you off? Would be one. And we knew that I was going to start that. So Jeff would get the suggestion from the audience, and I would sit down with my guitar, and I would usually do some kind of a James Taylor-y, lovey-dovey, happy song about being pissed off about whatever the thing was you got from the audience. One of them is on our CD. If you look up Steamy Monday, the Impromptones CD, one of them is called Which Way You Goin'? And it was a pretty song about people not signaling on the street. So there was a little bit of structure within the show that we knew who was going to get the suggestion for a thing and who was going to start that song. And then after that, it was pretty much catch as catch can. Whoever heard the next lyric or had a harmony would come in on top of that person. Sometimes, if you established something that sounded like a chorus, then we would repeat that a couple of times, and the other guys would come in and sing harmonies on that chorus because they heard you do it the first time. So you know what the harmonies are going to be when it comes around again. And you would just drop in and drop the harmonies on top of that piece, on top of that chorus. There were certain songs that just yelled for harmonies to begin with. Like we did an improvised barbershop quartet.
Wow.
We would get a suggestion for that, and we would just do all of the stereotypical funny barbershop quartet-y type things. And there are some standard barbershop quartet tricks that we would copy and try to work in here and there. And then I think we closed most of our shows with a mini musical. And that's very common now today, too.
So you guys were doing 15 to 20 minutes at the end?
Exactly.
How was that structured?
A day in the life of someone,
Okay.
what was your day today? How's your day been? Did you go to work? What did you do? And we would just do a day in the life and then just play all the different parts and try and get as much information about their day and their friends and who are you here with? Were these people that you're here with, were they part of your day today? Just trying to work in as much stuff from a day, or occasionally we would say, okay, here's you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And then, is this your friend here next to you? Okay, so tell us about your friend. We want you to tell us what you think of her. What's her deal? And then we would work those facts, those things into the musical, playing all the parts, playing the person themselves and whatnot.
I saw it described somewhere as pop opera. Does that mean that you sang the entire time?
It depended. Sometimes it was singing the entire time, or we would have scenes, a little bit of scene work and then into a musical from if an idea came out of that. We never played, there's that structured game of you're doing a scene and then someone says, sing it.
Yeah.
And you have to sing a song about whatever that line you just said, or I have to go to the bathroom, sing it. Okay, now you have to sing a song about going to the bathroom, blah, blah, blah. We never really did that. We just kind of free-formed it a little bit more. And that was the thing about our shows, is that we tried not to structure them too much. I mean, we did some stereotypical improv group games like Song from a Hat, where people in the audience would write a random word on a piece of paper and they put them all in a hat. And we would start singing a song about going to church and we're going to take a piece of paper out and it's a lizard. Oh my gosh, there's a lizard on the, whatever. That was really bad, but you get my point.
Yeah.
The word that you pulled out of the hat would guide the rest of the lyrics. And there's a lot of groups who do that. That's a kind of a standard musical improv game. And there are a few others. We couched our shows more as a lounge act than an improv show. We wanted it to be more, you're going to see the Rat Pack do improv. Our songs were loosely structured and more focused on creating good melodies and harmonies and hopefully smart lyrics. Didn't always work, never does. But again, if you learn how to crash and burn gracefully, you can get yourself out of any bad situation.
So show structure wise then, other than, if you get the angry suggestion, we know Joe's going to start this song.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that happens every night. Does it happen in the same place every night?
Yeah, we had a show list of now we're doing this, now we're doing that.
How was that devised? And I'm asking because some of the initial stuff that you talk about being your first encounters with musical improv, you weren't doing a blues line, you weren't doing Irish drinking.
So
What's that? You did?
We did. It's more about rhyming. Once you learn the melody, you're really just trying to rhyme with the word that the person set you up with.
Yeah.
What's funny about that game is fucking the other guy by giving them orange to rhyme with.
Right.
Or purple or any of the other unrhymable words and seeing what they come up with. One of the stock bits of that game is giving someone a really hard word to rhyme and then having that person look at you like, how... That's a funny moment. Audiences see that and they go, "Oh, he really screwed that guy. How's he going to come up with the answer to that?" That's shtick. That's not real improv.
Yeah, and the answer is door hinge.
Exactly right. There's the only thing that rhymes with orange is door hinge.
I don't have a purple answer off the top of my head, but
yeah, for a long time we did Irish drinking song, but then we lost it because it was too formulaic.
Well, yeah, that's what the musical improv games that I'm familiar with don't seem to be what you gravitated toward or what you used. I imagine there were some of the things that you encountered initially, but you really created a show that didn't rely on the gimmick or the game of the musical improv games.
And that was the whole point. We didn't want it to feel like a gimmick. We didn't want it to seem like, well, once you know the structure of that, it's easy to fill in the blanks. Then you're just playing Mad Libs. You're not even really improvising the music. We wanted to improvise the melodies. We wanted complex harmonies. We wanted the music to be as good as the comedy. That was our whole point. So we didn't have structure to our games. A lot of the times it was just, hey, what do you do for a living? Okay, here's a song about Jeff, who is a plumber. And it took whatever direction Michael, the music director, whatever he started playing on the piano was the direction of the song. If he started out going bum 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 bum, that's how we would jump into the song. If he started playing we liked the songs to feel like songs from the American songbook. Songs from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and then songs that had thoughtful lyrics and graceful melodies and a little bit of technical complexity to them, as opposed to Irish drinking song, which is oh lighty di 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 oh, and you know the person's going to go da 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 da
Yeah.
da da. And once you know that rhythm and you know that tune, you're really just plugging in words. You're really just playing Mad Libs. That's not musical improv.
Yeah.
Musical improv is free and open and jazz. We wanted to be jazz, essentially. You know, and that's certainly what I got from Phyllis Katz. Studying with Phyllis, you know, she's very much about doing unstructured musical improv where you're not following, it's not a gag, it's not a setup bit. You are purely making up a melody and the lyrics in a more purely musical way rather than plugging in words to a set thing that you already know.
So you said you were like a James Taylor folk kind of thing for the angry song,
Uh-huh.
or the song wasn't angry, the suggestion was angry.
Right.
Were there many more moments like that? Did Michael back you up on piano?
Sometimes, but mostly he would just let me play and we would get through a song and I would sit down at the front and the edge of the stage, you know, and make it real intimate. And the guys would come over and sit next to me and we would do whatever the song was. And I'm not as facile on guitar as Michael is on piano. I mean, Michael is a master pianist who can improvise in any key and any style. I'm not that facile on the guitar. I know what I know and I'm good at what I do, but I don't have that breadth of knowledge. So my songs would generally fall into similar chord structures. I would always try to change it up because we didn't want to play the same thing. One of the things we wanted as improvisers, as a gift to ourselves, was to not repeat stuff that we had done and to try to find new ground. That was the whole point, to break new ground, to do something no one's ever done before.
Yeah.
Which in the improv world these days, I don't think is possible. I think everything has been done. I would love to see something new under the sun with improv. There's a group in LA that I think their history, I don't think they're doing shows anymore. I don't think they ever will, called The Resistance. And it was an improvised action movie with a bunch of younger, more athletic guys, and they would have crash pads on stage and they would do fight sequences and improvise fight scenes. I mean, it was freaking brilliant. One of the funniest shows with the best people I've ever seen in my life. And I think they're permanently broken up, but I would love to see them do that show again. But that's something new, something you've never seen before.
Yeah.
If you can find that new aspect and a way to improvise, I think you've got a show.
Yeah.
Most people aren't.
What was the driving force then with that ideal for the impromptones? Because it would have been very easy to settle on an act and know that the people in St. Louis didn't see our show in Austin, so we can do the same thing. What was the zeitgeist in the group that made you decide we want this to be fresh? I'm with you. I'm on the same page.
That was our quest. I mean, we really saw it that way. Our quest was to be original every time, to not depend on tropes, not depend on stuff that we'd done before. Did we do it? Of course we did. Once in a while, something comes up that you can reuse. And you can do that in an honest way. We're not perfect people. We're not,
Yeah.
We're, at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of clowns trying to do something smart and funny. The ability to see the world in a funny way, to see the world for the absurdity that it is a gift that some people have. And that's what you're trying to do, is show the world the absurdity of the world around them through improvising scenes and improvising situations. Because what people are laughing at is what they recognize.
Yeah.
What they recognize in themselves and what they recognize in other people. Go, oh, that's a true thing. That's a funny thing about people. I'm going, and they're presenting that on stage, so I'm going to laugh.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I don't know that it does.
Yeah, it does. And for me, and I'm guessing that it's probably the same for you, like for those of us that are like, we want this to be different tomorrow. We if we're playing whatever, moving bodies is really difficult to get actually good scene work into. But if this opportunity for this comes up for the same joke that we played last night, we want to intentionally avoid it, because at the end of the night, then that was more fun for me. It's more fun for me to have it be new each time. And it's more fulfilling for me as an artist for it to be new each time versus to recycle the thing I did yesterday.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. If you're being honest, if you're just up there to get a laugh, you don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to use what works all the time. But if part of your improv journey is to make yourself a better performer and you're being honest with yourself, then you're going to try to be original every time you do it. That's the point. It's not just to get a laugh, it's to stretch your imagination. It's almost like you're testing your ability to be AI, to crowdsource information from the huge bank of information you have in your brain, to be able to rapidly pull things that are smart and hopefully amusing because you've done some interesting kind of thoughtful juxtaposition of realities that becomes an absurdity. And you put that out there and people go, oh, that's hysterical because it's two things that don't belong together, but he found a way to make them work. It's that process. It's that synthesizing of your experiences and your knowledge into something that is honest and truthful and is an honest observation of a human flaw or an absurdity. And you put it out there in a way that makes people laugh. That to me that's the scientific process of improv. Repeating a joke that you know from before is not that. Finding new combinations of ideas, that's, I think, the process that makes your brain grow. You're probably creating new neural pathways by doing that. So that's the journey in my mind, if you're being honest about doing improv. That's kind of the Spolin mentality too. That's the old school improv mentality. Acting, to me, is pursuit of the truth. And it's bringing your own truth to the truth of the story that you're trying to tell. So if you're pursuing something other than that, I'm not going to say you're not doing it for the right reasons, but you're not doing it for those reasons. You might be doing it for some other reason to serve a purpose of your own. And maybe that purpose is just to get laughs. Maybe you don't care about any of the honesty or the soul searching or the putting together of disparate ideas to create something new. Maybe you don't care about that. If your audience is happy and they don't mind paying the $20 to see you, have at it. You're doing you.
Yeah.
Doing the right thing for yourself. I don't choose to work that way.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's an inherent promise in improv as well, that the show that this audience is going to see is going to be different because it's for you and you're here and it's not last night's audience and it's not tomorrow's audience.
Exactly.
And this is going to, I think, show my ignorance just about art or paintings. But the analogy I want to draw sounds to me like you as an individual, but also you as a member of Impromptones wanted to be a Monet or a Picasso, not a Kincaid.
Yeah. We wanted to be Banksy.
Yeah. Yes.
We wanted to be completely out there, completely outside the lines. We wanted to create something that no one had ever seen before in every show that we did. That was the desire.
Yeah.
Whether or not we actually did that in every show, probably not. In fact, I can say definitely not, because we would get off stage and go, that was okay, but I got trapped in my brain and I wasn't free, I wasn't flowing. And there were those shows. And there would be a show where there would be 2 or 3 really good bits and 2 or 3 stinkers.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work. The more you do it, the better you get at it, of course. I mean, it is something that you have to practice. And we would rehearse, usually at Michael's house in front of his piano. And Michael would take us through musical drills. He would play a note, and we would have to hear in our heads. He would say, okay, here's middle C, and he'd play that note. And he'd say, now I'm playing this note. What note is it? In our heads, we would have to say, okay, so C, C, D, E, F, G. It's a G. D, D. So you're playing a fifth. So we knew what intervals were. We would know if he's playing a third or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth or a seventh. So in our brains on stage, we would go, he's playing that. It's in a major key. So I'm going to do the major third harmony over that note that the other guy's singing. That's the depth of musical information and training that we went through to become what we were on stage.
Yeah. I will also say 2 things. One is hearing you talk about it that way illustrates, I think, one of the things that's so deceptive, because when you are as good as you are and as good as the Impromptones were, people can walk out thinking, I could do that, because you make it look easy.
You want people to think that.
Yeah. And then they try it and they find out for real. And the other thing is, in terms of walking out thinking, oh, I was in my head, or that wasn't the best show we've ever done. This is where Banksy has it easy, because Banksy can paint over what he doesn't like. But as an improvisational actor, you don't get to do that. It's there. It happened. It's done.
Right.
You can't go back and correct it or change it.
Right. You can't hit a button and have it shred itself.
Right.
It's still there.
Or perhaps you could convince the audience that you did it intentionally.
Right.
But it's all, this was performance art.
Right.
Yeah.
The Impromptones' first big breakout performance was at the Big Stinkin' Improv Festival in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
we did our show and just got an amazing response. We got a standing ovation. And after the show, people were just coming up and saying, we've never seen anything like that. The impromptus, you guys are fantastic. And so we thought, wow, maybe we've got something here. And we just kept pursuing it. We started doing shows at the Cinegrill. The building itself was built in the 20s, I think, or maybe even earlier than that. 1920s, not the 2020s. So we were doing shows there, and we started getting some really good notices from all the papers in town, Variety, and just everybody. And Jason Alexander from Seinfeld came to see us, really liked us, and he hooked us up with his guys at William Morris and got us picked up by them. We had a good publicity team, and they helped us to get into the cruise lines and start doing shows around the country. We did shows in Austin. We did shows all over the Mediterranean. We went to Tunisia, for God's sake. Just amazing things were starting to happen. Really sad that it broke apart.
Yeah.
That happened and really kind of took the taste for improv out of my mouth for a long time. I dropped out of the scene for a few years and just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I haven't been back in a group since then, and that was Impromptones broke up in 2000, and then we did the New Tonics for about a year and a half. That was kind of the last improv group that I was in.
Have you done improv since then in other ways?
Yeah,
okay, good.
I've done a few little shows here and there, but nothing. I mean, we were starting to play to large audiences and doing festivals and things and playing to houses of 3,000 to 5,000 people. And I've done a few small shows since then, but nothing on that scale since then.
Initially, when we started talking, you were mentioning how Second City and Groundlings to some extent too, that it's about sketch. And it seems like there's an Ouroboros kind of there between improv and sketch, that in some ways improv came out of sketch and then improv also leads to sketch. And it's this weird relationship. And I love improv. So for me, it's always about the improv, but there's definitely a relationship there. And just the way the world works and what I know from speaking to other people, I know that some of those musical improv groups exist, even if they know it or not, because the Impromptones existed. And they wouldn't exist without that Ancestry.com of improv.
Right. Yeah. I think maybe we opened some doors or at least hopefully inspired some other people to do something more original than just Irish drinking song. And
yeah. And I think that even beyond just musical improv, that inspired people in your goals to be, like you said, like Banksy, and to do something fresh and new each time and have it be a new creation, a new work of art every time you go out on stage. That's commendable. And that to me is why I love improv so much, and where the joy of improv comes from is the fact that anything can happen, and sometimes it does.
Yeah.
I don't go to an improv show because I want to see the thing that I've seen before.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah, absolutely.
Like I said, you've been an inspiration. I know for a fact, because Kayla was just telling me the other day that you made an indelible impact on the improv community, and that still nothing compares to the Impromptones in terms of musical complexity and what's out there right now. So you have a legacy.
Thank you.
And yeah,
that means the world to me, and that's enough. That's enough for me. Having someone say that, I can die happy.
Well, don't.
If I could claim any, as you say, legacy, it would be: did I inspire anyone to be truthful? Did I inspire anyone to at least try to bring more of that to their performance? And that would be enough for me. That would make me happy. Because I know other people did exactly that for me.
Yeah.
And if I can pass on that gene, that particular performance gene, to anybody else, then I think I've done what I was put here on earth to do.
Yeah.
In some small way. I'll never have the impact that Gary Austin had, or that Keith Johnstone had, or anything like that. But if 5 or 6 people said, "Hey, I liked what Joe Whyte did," that'd be enough for me.
That's it for part 1 of my interview with Joe Whyte. Come back for part 2, where we talk about Joe's stint on Quick Wits, his experience at the Chicago Improv Festival, and I'll submit Joe to the Proustian questionnaire. Find him in the show notes and try to book him for your next improv festival. He's a wealth of knowledge and a delight. If you want to contact me with any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can reach me at improvbrain@gmail.com, and you'll find bonus content on the Patreon, even at the free tier, so find the podcast over there as well. Wherever and however you do it, thanks for listening to Improv Autopsy.